Amelia Warner, the woman who dared to refuse the whole world to keep a man. The rain had just stopped when the text message arrived on Tuesday night. The street lights were still wet, the warm smell of earth wafted from the sidewalk, the little things Amelia Warner had come to love about the simple life after all the chaos. The message read only one sentence: they're offering $1 billion. Call. The small phone in her hand felt heavier. What had fallen into her lap was not just a number, but a universe of possibilities, glamour, contracts, power, and a vast void that could swallow everything she loved. Amelia glanced over at the bed, where a figure lay sleeping. Jamie lay curled up, his hand on his chest, breathing evenly. In the darkness, his face had a rare serenity, one he rarely brought to life on posters or red carpets. She wondered if a contract like that would leave this place a place for such peaceful mornings and afternoons. "What are you doing?" he whispered, his eyes still closed. "Text," she said hoarsely. $1 billion. Jamie opened his eyes. At first he smiled, the smile that always made her melt, with joy, with surprise. Then his gestures and expression changed. A series of possibilities flashed before her eyes: the blockbuster, the money, the studio, new expectations, and the test of their relationship. Amelia knew that such contracts were more than just casting calls. They would require image, schedules, control, and, what she feared most, distance. Over the 8 years they had been together, they had learned to balance two worlds: the world of lights and cameras, and the earthy world of kitchens, books, and music they had built. A big contract could upset that balance. "Let me see," Jamie said, and his voice dropped like a man who always tried to look longer before he walked. But the story didn't begin with the phone and the number. It started with a letter. Amelia found it in a junk box in the attic of their new house. It was a brown envelope, unpostmarked, and inside were handwritten notes, the ink fading a little. The sender signed only a pseudonym, Amelia. No address, no date. The words were cold and clear: "If that price comes, I know what to do." Amelia thought at first it was a prank by an old co-worker. But then she realized she had seen the writing before, in an old diary of her mother's, one her mother had hidden at the bottom of a cupboard when Amelia was little. The handwriting was the same, the tone was the same. Amelia, a strange name, like the title of an old novel. Amelia remembered her mother, the woman of mystery, who toiled in her vegetable garden and old newspapers, who had taught her to listen quietly before every big decision. Her mother used to say, "Some people come into our lives to pull us off the path we think we want to take." Amelia never thought her mother would send her a warning, especially by leaving an unsigned letter in the attic. Jamie had been a man of simple action all his life. He made no secret of his ambition, but he knew what made him happy. When Amelia told him about the letter, he just closed his eyes, as if he understood that there were invisible forces at work that seemed to be willing. "What do they want if they have to pay that much?" he asked. "Just fame, or something else?" Amelia shook her head. "They didn't say, just a big contract, publicity, and a clause that controlled the family's image. They wanted her on every show. They wanted not only my presence but yours as well. They wanted to make us a brand." Jamie was silent for a moment. "And what does that mean?" "It means we'll lose the option to live a normal life. Do you see us on a giant billboard, manufactured smiles, pre-planned schedules, public expectations? I'm afraid that if I say yes, we won't be us anymore. I'm afraid there will be more people behind every decision, and I don't know if you'll be there with me when they pull the strings." The last word blew like a cold wind, and Jamie hugged her. "If it's going to cost you me, you're right to worry," he said. The woman named Amelia, if she existed, didn't appear in the usual way. She was a reflection in seemingly unrelated incidents. A journalist asking about Jamie's partner in an interview, an email to an agent asking 2 personal questions, a call to a private contractor asking for a song and image to be made for impact. They all had a small mark, a small flower printed in the title, Ella's picture, like a hidden signature. Amelia began investigating with the help of an old friend who worked in PR. They followed the trail, a hidden email account, a PR firm located on a small corner of a street, a consultant who had worked on many large projects. Each clue led to another, but Ella's name remained as opaque as mist. Maybe it's just a tactic, the friend said. Someone wants to make sure they have a voice. They oppress us with fear of loss. But Amelia couldn't accept that idea. Every decision had to be clear, and if anyone it was manipulation, she wanted to know their faces. One afternoon later, when Jamie was shooting in another city, Amelia received a call from a man's voice, hidden. He gave an address and a date in a small cafe on the riverbank, where the flashbulbs reflected on the water. Amelia left. She wore a long coat, let it hang loose, tried to walk like a normal person, but she was as tangled as a silken trouser. The cafe was empty, only a few people were whispering. In the corner sat a middle-aged woman, with silver-gray hair and bright eyes, asking for her hand on the coffee. She smiled as if welcoming an old friend. "I'm Amelia Warner," she said. "Or at least that's the name you chose when life forced you to name it." Amelia stood still. She didn't need an introduction. Her experienced gaze told her she knew better. "I am Amelia," the woman said, and this time Amelia knew she was right. "Or you could call me the doorkeeper." The woman didn't look like someone who was around herbs. She looked like a woman who had lived through many lives. Her voice was poetic, but there was something sharp about it. "Why do you do that?" Amelia asked, the "do that" ringing like an open inquest. Amelia laughed. "Because people love each other, but sometimes love needs to be protected from secondary calls like chance." The sky seemed to echo. "Protected?" Amelia repeated. "How? How does the contract disappear?" "Not sure," she replied. "I don't make the contract disappear. I just make the choices appear that are in the heart of the person involved. The world is full of noise. I help people hear the little voice inside." Amelia felt angry, at the interference, at the calculation that she thought was protection. "Who gave you the right to decide for us?" Amelia tilted her head. "No one. It was my choice. And sometimes outsiders see things that insiders don't want to see. I've lost a lot, so I intervene when I see the signs. I see the signs in this contract. It's not just about money or fame. It's about the soul." She seemed to say it with a need to. "I've seen lives torn apart by contracts like this before. People start living for the public's taste. They trade freedom for security. For people, sometimes $1 billion contract is a kind of shackle. And I can't ignore it." Amelia tried to keep her composure. "But you let him out? You asked him to say no?" Amelia shook her head. "I just create the conditions for the truth to come out. I send letters, I sow doubt, I trigger discussions where they can't hide it. I make the studio realize something they didn't expect, their responsibility to their family. And sometimes, when they see that, they back out. They calculate not just profits but also PR risks, internal conflicts, press stories that could hurt their long-term interests. I just hold a mirror up to them." Amelia looks at the woman, wondering if she's an angel or a demon. There's a truth in her heart. If the contract could have lost Jamie, or changed him, then she'd saved them. But somehow, that salvation feels like a robbery. "But, how did you do it?" she asks. Who will pay for your actions? Amelia sighs. Payback? Oh, there's always a price. I leave a few traces, they see it and panic. I don't want to hurt. I just don't want the weak to pay dearly for promises to the greedy. I've paid before. I've lost people I love. I don't want to pass on that pain. Her answer was a confession. Amelia sensed that behind that intervention there was a tragic story of a lifetime. And like all tragic stories, it could be sickly beautiful. In the weeks that followed, the signs leaked out and the studio faltered. Newspapers began asking about the wife's influence on the star's artistic decisions. Unofficial data on the family's brand value appeared in internal reports. The studio began to calculate, would a big contract bring superior profits if it also risked splitting the image? Management was wary of public debate, wary of changing public sentiment. And finally, the letter came, a withdrawal, for strategic reasons. Amelia felt relieved. But at the same time, her heart felt heavy. An invisible hand had been working everything, and she didn't know whether to thank or blame. Jamie, learning the truth bit by bit, didn't get angry. Instead, he felt quietly hurt. I want to make my own decisions, he said one night, looking into the dim kitchen. If I deny, I want to be the one to deny. If I accept, I want to be the one to accept. I don't want anyone else to manipulate us. Amelia hugged him. I know, I want that too. But I'm scared, and sometimes fear leads you to seek outside help. They sat in silence. Outside the window, the city was a garden of scattered lights, bright but cold choices. In their hearts, there was a space not of social media, not of the media, but of each other. They were caught between two worlds, a public life full of light and a private life of quiet laughter. The night of decision came. The studio sent out the final invitation. The world speculated. They wanted a statement, something official. Jamie read the draft of the statement to the cameras, a diplomatic refusal, a thank you for your interest, a promise to think about other projects. Amelia wrote and erased it dozens of times, a sincere apology to her supporters, an explanation to her family, and a confessional moment that revealed her true self. But before he pressed send, Jamie suddenly stood up. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled a folded sheet of paper from the pile. The paper contained another letter, not from Amelia, but from Jamie himself, written one afternoon after they had a fight a few months ago. He wrote about love, about the weariness of pleasing outsiders, about the fear of losing peaceful moments. He always kept that letter to himself, like a vow they had forgotten. You know, he said, his voice choking. That night, when I wrote it, I thought if one day they came and asked me to play someone else, I would remember this piece of paper. What would I choose? Fame, money, or mornings with you for coffee? Amelia burst into tears. She took his hand, and this time they wrote a joint statement, not just rejecting a contract, but declaring their freedom. They spoke openly of each other, of the life they wanted to keep, without embellishment, without commercial gain. The statement was sent. In the days that followed, be mainly nonsense. There was praise, there was sarcasm. But mostly questions about choices. Had they missed a great opportunity? Was it the right decision? Amelia and Jamie moved on, in the same light. But in Amelia's heart, one question still slipped. Who was Amelia? She had disappeared after that meeting at the cafe. No address, no trace. Just eyes that had seen all lives.